The skyline of Gaza lies in silence once more. From above, the shattered concrete of the Al Makusi towers stretches to the horizon, a maze of dust, rebar, and grief. The sound of footsteps echoes through the ruins as survivors pick their way through what was once home. 2 years of relentless war have turned this narrow strip of land into a graveyard of memories. Today, amid the stillness, a new pledge has emerged. The Palestinian Islamist movement, Hamas, says it will return to Israel the bodies of all hostages remaining in Gaza, fulfilling one of the last conditions of the US brokered ceasefire agreement. The announcement came after days of tension, accusation, and delay. Israel had charged Hamas with violating the truce, claiming the group had failed to hand over the remains of dozens of Israeli captives killed during the war. Hamas replied that the task was far more complicated than Israel imagined, that much of Gaza's infrastructure lay buried under mountains of debris, that entire neighborhoods had been flattened, and that even locating the bodies had become an agonizing, uncertain process. For many families in Israel, the weight has been unbearable. For 2 years, they have lived between hope and mourning, clinging to the possibility that their loved ones might still be alive somewhere under the ruins, or that, at the very least, their remains might be returned for burial. This Friday, Hamas announced that it was ready to fulfill that promise, but warned that the process would take time. In a statement issued through its media wing, the group said it would cooperate fully with international partners, including the Red Cross, to recover the bodies from sites across Gaza. It also stressed that the destruction caused by Israel's bombardments had left vast areas inaccessible without specialized equipment. Meanwhile, Israel's government, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, vowed to keep up pressure until every hostage, alive or dead, is brought home. Citizens of Israel, Netanyahu said in a brief televised address, 2 years ago, the Simchat Torah holiday became a day of national mourning. We are determined to bring everyone back, and we will. The ceasefire agreement, negotiated under intense American mediation, was announced on October 10th and took effect the following morning. Under the deal, Hamas agreed to release all surviving hostages and return the remains of those killed within 72 hours. By the Monday deadline, the group had freed the final 20 living captives, but handed over only 9 of the 28 bodies it had pledged to deliver. The shortfall ignited outrage in Israel and frustration in Washington. In Washington, President Donald Trump issued an unmistakable warning. Standing before reporters at the White House, he said that if Hamas continued to execute prisoners or violate the terms of the ceasefire, the US would go in and finish it. The words echoed across global news networks, a reminder that the man who had brokered the deal was now threatening to dismantle it. Trump's message was blunt, even by his standards. If they keep killing people in Gaza, he said, there will be no other option but to kill them. His remarks underscored the fragile balance of this post-war landscape, a truce built on threats as much as on diplomacy. Back in Gaza, the picture was far more desperate. Video released by the Hamas-run Al-Aqsa TV showed armed fighters parading several blindfolded men through the streets, accused of collaborating with Israel. The footage, unverified by AFP, revealed a chilling scene: men bound and trembling, surrounded by militants who declared that justice was being served. Within hours, Hamas confirmed it had executed several of them, claiming they had provided information that led to Israeli airstrikes. The decision was condemned internationally, including by the US, which said the killings violated the spirit of the ceasefire. The contradiction was stark. Even as Hamas pledged cooperation, it was enforcing its own brutal form of control. Analysts said the executions were part of an internal campaign to reassert authority after months of chaos, displacement, and loss. The group, which has ruled Gaza since 2007, is struggling to maintain order in a territory now split between ruins and rival factions. In Tel Aviv, as refrigerated vans arrived at a forensic center, the slow, grim process of identification began. Each body retrieved from Gaza carried with it not just DNA samples and forensic tags, but a story of soldiers, civilians, aid workers, and children caught in a conflict that blurred the line between battlefield and home. Israeli military officials say the remains of at least 19 individuals are still missing, believed to be buried under collapsed tunnels and bombed-out apartment blocks. International experts, including Turkish search and rescue teams, have joined the mission to locate them. Turkey's foreign ministry confirmed that a specialized team had arrived in Gaza to assist in the recovery of bodies, including those of the hostages. This unexpected Turkish involvement adds a diplomatic layer to the story. Ankara has maintained uneasy ties with both Hamas and Israel, condemning Israeli attacks while hosting indirect talks through Qatari mediators. Its decision to send experts marks the first technical cooperation with Israel since the truce began. For Washington, the ceasefire was a cornerstone of Trump's Gaza peace roadmap, a plan he presented as a triumph of American leadership. The agreement, drafted with Egyptian and Qatari input, called for an immediate end to hostilities, the exchange of prisoners, and the gradual reopening of border crossings under international supervision. The return of hostages, Trump had said, was the moral centerpiece of the deal, but the implementation has been slow and bitter. UN observers report that aid deliveries remain minimal, access to northern Gaza is still restricted, and thousands of displaced families are yet to return home. In some areas, improvised cemeteries have become landmarks, names carved on scrap metal, photos taped to stones. For the families of the hostages, the promise of closure feels both near and far. In Jerusalem, crowds have gathered daily outside the Prime Minister's office, holding portraits of their loved ones and candles that flicker against the autumn wind. One mother told reporters, "We don't need speeches. We need their bodies back. We need to bury them inside Gaza." The mood is one of exhaustion. Residents who survived the bombings now face a slow, uncertain recovery. Shops remain shuttered, hospitals run on generators, and water lines are broken. In Khan Yunis, children play in the rubble, their laughter faint but defiant, the sound of life returning to a place defined by death. The humanitarian toll is staggering. According to Gaza's health authorities, over 45,000 people were killed during the two-year war, with many still unaccounted for. International organizations warn that thousands of bodies remain trapped beneath the rubble, decomposing in the heat. Hamas says these conditions make it nearly impossible to quickly locate and hand over all Israeli remains, a claim Israel rejects as an excuse. Across the border, the Israeli military has begun deploying ground-penetrating radar and satellite imaging to help identify mass graves. Teams from the International Committee of the Red Cross are coordinating with both sides, one of the few neutral players still trusted in this landscape of accusation and mistrust. For President Trump, the stakes are also political. He has framed the Gaza ceasefire as one of his administration's signature foreign policy successes, proof that America can bring peace to the Middle East. But with each delay, that claim grows harder to defend. His critics accuse him of empowering Hamas by offering them legitimacy without accountability. Supporters argue that no other leader could have secured even a temporary halt to the violence. In Jerusalem, Netanyahu faces his own political storm. The families of hostages demand answers. Opposition parties call for new elections. Yet for now, he remains defiant, insisting that Israel will not rest until the last of our sons and daughters is returned. The images coming out of Gaza tell a parallel story, one of endurance, not victory. Men with shovels dig through dust. Women line up at makeshift aid points. Medics search the wreckage of what was once a hospital. Even in this fragile pause, the shadow of the next conflict lingers. Hamas, for its part, insists that it remains committed to the ceasefire, but in the same breath, its spokesmen say the group reserves the right to defend Gaza against any Israeli provocation. The ambiguity leaves the region on edge, a truce that feels more like an intermission than an ending. Internationally, pressure is mounting for a more permanent peace. The United Nations has called for an independent mechanism to oversee the recovery and repatriation of bodies, while France and Egypt have proposed a joint humanitarian task force. But progress is slow, and the lines between humanitarian aid and political negotiation remain blurred. In the ruins of Al-Makusi, a drone camera captures a solitary figure walking across the wreckage, a man carrying a folded white cloth. It's impossible to know what he holds, perhaps a piece of debris, perhaps something far more personal. It is this image, silent and unresolved, that defines Gaza today. After years of war, ceasefires and shattered promises, the question remains, when the dust finally settles, what will be left to return, bodies or trust? As dusk falls over the Mediterranean, the wind stirs the ashes of what once was Gaza City. In the distance, the call to prayer rises, haunting, solemn and steady. For those waiting on both sides of the border, the sound carries a single, fragile hope that the dead may finally come home and that the living may one day find peace.